When a disaster strikes, assistance often arrives only after the damage is done. But what if we could anticipate the crisis and act before it unfolds? That's the idea behind anticipatory action. It means taking measures ahead of a forecast disaster to reduce its impact on people's lives and livelihoods.
In practice, this can mean evacuating livestock or reinforcing shelters ahead of a cyclone, distributing cash assistance to vulnerable households, or pre-positioning supplies before a crisis peaks. Anticipatory action relies on forecasts and data. These forecasts might give long lead times, for example, with slow onset events like droughts, or just a few days of warning, as with sudden onset events like hurricanes.
Anticipatory action requires pre-agreed plans, including clear decision rules, trigger points, and funding that can be released quickly when early warning signs appear. Anticipatory action has proven to be a smart, fast, and cost-effective way to reduce human suffering and protect livelihoods and assets from predictable shocks.
Anticipatory financing is the funding released to pay for anticipatory actions. Having finance available in advance is what makes anticipatory action possible. Without it, it will be harder for governments, agencies, and communities to act on early warnings. Funds are pre-arranged and triggered rapidly once certain forecast thresholds are met.
Some systems use hard, objective triggers where funds are released once data crosses a set line.
For instance, funds for droughts may be triggered when rainfall drops below a certain level, or for hurricanes when wind speeds hit agreed levels.
Others use softer triggers, such as expert judgment or committee-based decisions, which allows more flexibility when certain forecasts are uncertain. Both aim to make sure that when the risk is high enough, money moves fast.
An anticipatory action protocol is a pre-agreed plan that sets out who does what when a specific trigger is met. Strong protocols are clear, evidence-based, and tested, often through simulation exercises. They are locally owned and can be linked to government systems, such as social protection networks. They need to be reviewed regularly as risks and data evolve.
But anticipatory action isn't just about the money dispersed when a shock is on the way, the so-called fueled funds. It also relies on build funding, the steady investment funding the systems, data, and partnerships that make early action possible. For anticipatory action to be effective, both build and fuel financing must be in place. Without one, the other cannot function. Systems without funding can't act, and funding without adequate systems is inefficient.
So, where does the money come from? A growing mix of donors, governments, and international funds are working together to make early action possible. Today, most anticipatory finance still comes from international donors, channeled through humanitarian agencies. The largest source are global contingency and pooled funds like the UN Central Emergency Response Fund, UN Country-Based Pool Funds, the IFRC's Disaster Relief Emergency Fund, the WFP Anticipatory Action Trust Fund, and the START Network's Start Ready Fund.
However, many of these mechanisms are only available to international organizations. That's beginning to change. Governments in countries like Ethiopia, Mongolia, the Philippines, and Mozambique are looking to adapt existing contingency budgets and national reserve funds so they can release money ahead of a shock. Other potential sources of anticipatory finance are emerging, including risk pooling schemes, insurance mechanisms, and the use of development bank and climate funds to support early and anticipatory action.
In Fiji, a new anticipatory insurance pilot supported by UNDRR and the UN Capital Development Fund allows small farming groups to receive payouts up to 72 hours before a cyclone hits. That early funding lets farmers secure equipment, move livestock, and protect their crops in time.
In the Philippines, a new law allows local governments to use response funds ahead of disasters when forecasts anticipate that over 15% of the population will be affected. While there is progress, anticipatory financing is still a tiny share of global crisis spending. To bring anticipatory action to scale, funding sources must be diversified and scaled up so that acting before disaster strikes become the new normal.
The future of anticipatory finance is about scale, inclusion, and sustainability. Globally, momentum is growing as governments, donors, and climate funds align around a shared agenda, making early action the norm, not the exception. Policy priorities are clear.
First, increase and diversify funding, especially for the fuel that powers early action. Second, embed anticipatory finance into national systems so it's part of a country's overall disaster management structure and planning. Third, strengthen coordination between humanitarian, development, and climate actors to achieve synergies and close funding gaps.
Finally, local leadership matters. Communities and national institutions are the first to act after disaster strikes and must be consulted in the shaping of triggers, thresholds, plans, and delivery. If these changes take root, anticipatory finance can transform crisis response from reacting too late to acting in time to protect lives, livelihoods, and dignity.
So how can countries and partners put anticipatory finance into practice? When applying UNDRR's 5-step approach to DRR financing, we can leverage the lessons and systems developed through anticipatory action. By integrating anticipatory approaches into the overall DRR financing architecture, governments and stakeholders can help ensure that financing is more proactive than reactive.
This way, we can act early, be more cost-effective, and most importantly, protect lives, livelihoods, and development gains before disasters strike. Through the 5-step lens, anticipatory finance turns foresight into financing, helping governments and communities act decisively, early, and effectively when risks rise.